Yeah, and we're going. So what I'll do basically is I'm gonna just take this and then I'll share it with everybody else so you guys know. And then you'll see that I'll write something later on and then put you
Great.
guys in it. So you'll be in YouTube for a little bit. In my YouTube at least. Um so Joe and Christopher. Yeah. Joe and Christopher. Joe and Ryan. Um so let's kind of do this a little bit. A lot of people kind of already know who you are, and some people don't know who you are because you're basically like behind the scenes in a lot of things. Um, but I've had the pleasure of like knowing you, Joe, for a while now. You've become a really good friend of mine, and Ryan as well. Now through knowing you, I've seen how Ryan also kind of carries this, like you both just kind of complement each other, and just seeing you guys and hearing how involved you guys are and how much you've done for theater, it kind of prompted me to just ask you guys if you would be willing to hop on with me and just kind of talk a little bit about some of these things. Um, Kind of like the idea behind this is I've been just talking to a lot of people in the industry a few people in actor, in choreography, in concert or Broadway. And I figured it would be also kind of interesting to hear your guys' perspective as the people behind the scenes, as people that have been involved in the industry for a while, on a few topics um, from that are related to now and that are probably related to what could be the future, and then maybe like some of the people that are thinking about maybe pivoting right now or thinking about like how do they approach this whole thing. So again, thank you so much, guys, for taking your time and sharing this time with me again.
Our pleasure. Happy to help.
Just giving you another distraction from everything else or procrastinating, either way. Would you guys just mind kind of like talking a little bit about, I guess you and Ryan just kind of take turns to how you guys, because I know you guys had a background in musical theater and then you guys have been kind of growing up in that. How did you guys end up like transitioning from like your live in theater and that perspective to going into behind the scenes and working in production with Ryan and you also, Jeff?
Do you want to go first, Ryan?
Sure, I'll go first. It's fine. I started as a performer. I went to college to perform and thought that that's what I wanted to do. While in college, we were given the opportunity, well, we were required to do a mandatory amount of crew time. And crew positions could be anything from like running a follow spot or building the set to stage management and overseeing productions. And because I had good organization skills, that I always seemed to land on the stage management side of that end of things. So I got used to calling cues in a show and organizing the cast and blocking notes and all the stuff that stage managers do on a regular basis. And then also while in college, we were given the opportunity, Joe and I together actually, of working for a kids entertainment program that was in Niagara Falls State Park. And that program was something that Joe and I built with the CEO of the company from the ground up. And so it was everything from designing the programming and figuring out the shows themselves to figuring out how we logistically make those shows happen. And after figuring out how logistically to make those shows happen, we often then had to like put on the suits and be the characters ourselves. So it was a little bit of everything. And we did that for 5 years, and we took it from, a fledgling program all the way to something we did the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. We were in developments to make a kids television program. There's a whole bunch of that stuff. And then, the funding for that sort of fell out overnight and we were left with nothing, even though we'd put a good amount of time into it. And so the question started to come up about what you want to do next and where you want to go. And we could fall back to performing a little bit. But by that point, I was not a performer. I had gotten a master's degree in dramatic literature, and I had talked about going to get a PhD so that I could teach on the college level. But in the end, I always kept coming back to the practicality elements of theater, the things that make it happen. And production management started to feel like it would be a good fit for me. I could bridge my technical skill set that I had with the knowledge of the art of theater and what that means. And I ended up being hired for an assistant production manager position at Troika Entertainment, which does national tours of musicals. And I was there for just about 9 years or so. before we made the decision to make the jump to New York. And I was hired at Aurora to be a full-time production manager. My time at Troika too, I'd come up through the ranks. So I went from assistant to associate to production manager to director of production type role, where I oversaw other people who were production managers too. And then with Aurora, I was hired as a production manager to do Broadway stuff. I continued doing national tours, but I was also doing Broadway shows on top of that. And then I was named as a vice president about a year and a half ago now. So it's been very cool. It's been a great experience and rising up through the ranks in different places. But I've done 75 national and international tours. I have done 25 Broadway shows. And I have a pile of other little odds and ends. I just finished doing a big event gig for the NHL, which was pretty cool because that's been work sort of in the downtime here. And that's me. That's the fastest I could do that.
That's a lot. Even at your fast, that's just still like a good, like, that's a chunky fast one.
And for fun, I teach at Columbia too. I teach production management at Columbia.
And on the side, in the spare time that I don't have, I also teach at Columbia. That's cool.
Which means that he and I, other than during the pandemic, have not seen each other in many years since we're both so busy. Other than
we were both so sad of not spending so much time together, and then all of a sudden you get like, oh yeah, here you go.
Just Sundays. We always did Sundays together. That's been our thing, right? Like we always have a day, and that's always been our thing. But
that's when you cook and Joe makes the desserts and bakes.
I'm not allowed to make desserts anymore because the first 3 months, that's all we did was bake and eat, and that did not go well. So we
keeping up with some of the things that you were telling me, and I was like, this is absurd. I want to.
I'm like counting calories right now. I am like strict 1,800 calories a day right now. So
that's right. I know that's up, but I wouldn't blame you. I mean, the cookies that I've had from, and then just the other thing, the cookies I've had from you guys, but they go away. I don't share those. I really don't. People always like, you're not. No.
I know. This year I had to bring you a separate thing of cookies because you wouldn't share them with your girlfriend.
I look forward to December every time. I was like, not sharing. How about you, Joe?
So my journey is not dissimilar, but is actually quite different than Ryan's. We both went to the same college, met in college. We've been together for a long time, and I never wanted to be a professional performer. That was not what I really went to school for. I thought I was going to really be a director. And so most of my schooling, even though my degree is in performance, was focused on directing and stage management and a little bit of producing. And when everything fell out with the kids' entertainment company that we were working for, I was just a little over a year out of college. And I thought that was going to be my full-time job for many, many more years to come. Clearly that didn't work out. So I was very fortunate to get a job at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And that's the reason we actually moved down to D.C. Initially, was so that I could take that job. And Ryan got the job at Aurora Productions literally I don't know, 2 weeks. Yeah, it was like days after we got there and he had applied for it even before then. So it was just kind of serendipity.
That was the Troika job too. That was the Troika job, not the Aurora job. But it was actually this crazy call out of the blue because Joe had this nice established job. I had a good connection down there to a theater to do some part-time work in terms of like managing patron services and stuff and to do a little part-time stuff, but I didn't have anything permanent. But we'd been there for like literally 48 hours, I think, when they called me. And they wanted me to start the following week. It was so fortuitous.
That's crazy. That's
awesome. Ryan
awesome.
was prepared to just like bartend and wait tables when we got there. So fortunately, you didn't have to do that. So I was at the Kennedy Center for almost 5 years working in the theater programming office, and I got to work on over 65 productions, either as a presenter or a producer. So we did a lot of large scale musicals, several of which transferred to Broadway while I was at the Kennedy Center. So I got a good taste of what the Broadway producing model looked like while I was at the Kennedy Center, which is a nonprofit. And because I was also acting as in the presenting office there, I learned what it was to be a presenter of national touring shows, but also understood the producing side of that model as well. And so I worked my way out from being a coordinator to an assistant general manager to the associate general manager over those 5 years. And then I got asked by the CEO of Troika, which is where Ryan was, to join their company as a general manager. And I took the opportunity because I really wanted to, take a crack at being the person in charge, so to speak, even though I probably was still not qualified yet to take the job. But thankfully, the CEO believed in me. And I was at Troika for almost 4 years, I think, in total. And got to work on tons of national tours and all kinds of projects that were in development. And Ryan and I really made the production department at the company extremely well functioning. And I think we both really enjoyed our time there. And then I got a call out of the blue to join a general management firm here in New York called RCI Theatricals. And Ryan and I really, had to take the time to think through if this was really the time we wanted to move to New York. We were very fortunate to both work in the industry at that high level without actually living in New York. We're one of the few people who I think have had that opportunity, but we both realized that we wanted to give New York a try. And so jumped at the opportunity. I was at RCI for a little over 2 years. It was actually shorter than I thought it probably was going to be, but I had another opportunity at my current company, which is our WS Entertainment Group, to come in, continue general managing, but also producing, which I really missed and wanted to do. Because when I was both at the Kennedy Center at Troika, I wore both the GM and the producing hat. When I was at RCI, I wore the GM hat, but really not the producing hat. And I really missed that side of the job, or they're two different jobs, but I missed that side of the industry. And so I've been here for almost 3 years. And right now it's a little weird and different, as it is for everyone working in the industry, but our company is pivoting in many different ways, and I've taken on different responsibilities during this time. But it's really my management skills from the theatrical world that has allowed me to take on other responsibilities here at RWS that aren't specifically theatrical, but it is managing other divisions of the company and trying to keep things moving forward. So that's my journey.
Oh my God, you guys' journey is here and then come back and then finally end in one spot together. That's awesome. Crazy journey, both of you.
We always tell people that our paths are not replicable, and I don't think any path is replicable in this industry. Right. Part of it is right timing and where you happen to be, having the right skill set for somebody, and then also, we are big believers in what it means to connect to people and to individuals and to foster those relationships. And we know that, it's a very small industry. Everybody talks to each other, so making sure that that you leave any sort of work situation with somebody else in a positive way is definitely something that we value.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of proven how you guys been able to kind of make it all the way through one to another, and then just, I mean, you can kind of tell how, even though I've seen you guys interact with some of your colleagues and everybody, it's just it's so easy for you guys to just connect with somebody and do all that, and really kind of, and you can really find that connection and that passion with theater, and both, because you have both sides of it, whether you are not in it anymore, as a professional dancer, where you have seen so much behind the scenes and are so involved in all that that still is in there, and it's probably so easy for people to connect. It was easy for me to connect with you guys also to begin with, and I'm not even a performer, so there goes that.
We always do that, though. It's I think whenever you always want a baseline for who you're working with, right? And so the first time that you meet somebody again, or you come back into a room with them for the first time, reconnecting over the things that you established before is a good thing. And I never assume that people remember who I am. That's just I always never assume that anybody actually knows who I am. So I'm always oh, hey, I'm Ryan, and we work together on Cats, and you were doing this at the time, and that was great, and tell me a little bit more about where you're at right now, and that kind of stuff, and try to find ways, because I never have an expectation that anybody remembers who I am. And frankly, if I'm doing the production management job in the right way, I think that I'm not as noticed. Like, I think that to really lead and empower teams means that they can make decisions and that kind of thing, and you put the right people in the right spot, and they come to you and they let you know what you need to, and you stand up and you lead the room when you're expected to do so, but you also know when to back off in that situation.
How have you guys been able to kind of keep up with some of those things now with like COVID hitting, and then it just seems like the whole industry just went like, well, let's just everybody disperse in a way. All those connections, all those networks between you guys and like your, like, as the people you were working with, other producers, consultants, all the stuff, to even like, I'm sure you guys have a group of performers or people that you kind of also have known for so long and maybe worked with before and stage managed and all that. How have you guys been able to just keep that still asking, still moving, still kind of alive?
I mean, it's hard right now. I'm not going to lie. I think early on in the pandemic, everyone was fairly hopeful that it was going to be shorter lived than it is going to be. And none of us know currently how long it's going to stretch on for. But just speaking specifically to like Broadway and national tours, and not even the other things that my company does, I think that it's going to be really hard for a lot of the performers and the technicians and really anyone who is employed in the actual theater space, to get through this time, because, Ryan and I are fortunate that we work, on really production years in advance. So Ryan's working on shows that are in development. I'm working on shows that are in development. So there are things that we would normally be doing at any given time now on those types of shows. So we're fortunate to have that work, currently, whereas, all of the other people who are working on a specific show that's up and running, if the show's closed, the show's closed, then they're out of a job, and there's a lot of other people in our industry who do what we do that are also on the brink of being out of a job, just by nature of the fact that there are a lot of shows that are just not going to reopen, and every office, every individual has a different situation in terms of what their future looks like, and it's devastating. There's a lot of people that we know who've been in the industry for decades, and are not sure if they're going to stay. If there, a lot of people have left New York already, a lot of performers, and I don't know if a lot of them are going to return or not when the work comes back. I don't think it's all going to come roaring back at the same time. So we might see a staggered return of people. But yeah, I think whatever it looks like on the other side of this, no one can say for certain. There's a lot of people I hope are still around in the industry who are beloved and really brilliant minds, but they very well could get poached up by other industries. They have really transferable skill sets, especially on the end of like what we do is, if you're a good manager and numbers and you know how to deal with people and all of the HR and legal, rules around employment law and everything like that, which is stuff that we deal with every day, you can go do that somewhere else. You don't have to do that in theater. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what I'm seeing. I don't know, Ryan, if you feel any differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of how you stay connected to, there is how you stay personally connected. And we try often to do, Zoom cocktails or something like that with people that we are close with, who are friends and are people in the industry and that kind of thing. And sometimes we do them with other producers and that kind of stuff. And you speak with, people who have information, who are in the know as other things come in, and you stay in touch. But it's definitely different than it used to be. It used to be, I mean, Broadway in many ways has always been like a college campus to a point. Everything is so focused in like a 5-block radius in the middle of New York that like walking down the street, I can run into 7 people and get different opinions and talk to them very quickly and then move on. And there's always something happening, right? Yeah. This is definitely a very different time in terms of how things have happened. For our company, Aurora right now we're loading out some shows. Taking them out of the theaters because those shows aren't coming back in some way. That's a level of employment that we had not had early in the pandemic, but as shows have announced closings, we're dealing with those. So like we're loading out Beetlejuice and starting Monday and that kind of thing, which were shows that were expected to close anyway, but that, have confirmed that that's what's happening. And so that does give us work for a while. And And it does give us a good connection back to the theater owners and back to the stagehands and back to the different people that we work with to sort of have conversations about where the future will take us to. And, you know, I don't think anybody can say that they know anything for certain right now, because there is so much of what we're talking about is up in the air.
Yeah.
You know, whether, you know, Broadway can even come back and successfully in a socially distanced format is a conversation, you know, because of the costs to run Broadway shows and things like that. So, you know, the pandemic has really left people spread out. And I can't blame anybody who fled New York in the moment, because it's so expensive to live here to begin with. You know, we were the epicenter of all of the illness and all of that sickness at that point. And that also takes its mental toll and things like that. And I think that all of the people that I know, Joe and I included, along with people who've stayed through the whole time, talk about the sort of mental toll that being sort of isolated in New York means, because New York is, you know, where you have friends and where you have people and you go to restaurants, and New York being an isolated place is not great. It's, you know, everybody has these small apartments around them. You typically don't have your own private outdoor space. And especially for those first 3 or 4 months when nobody was sure exactly what was transmitting the disease and what was not transmitting the disease, and like everybody holed up inside for the most part, it became really tough. And I think that we'll deal with some of the mental impact of that for a while. But
yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, like, New York is built. What makes New York great is also what's like making it so difficult to be in right now. Because it's like it's like now
Very much so.
you just turn its back and it's like, this small apartment is great because it means more people and like all compact, and you get to just be exposed to people so much. Now all of a sudden it's like, no. This is what's making things worse. You gotta do the opposite. And I was like, oh, it's like turn the city inside out in a way, and that's difficult. You guys kind of talked a little bit about a few things though, like mental. I think the mental aspect of it is huge. And then I guess lucky for you guys being able to kind of maintain some of that projects, like you're saying, Joe, that you have things that are lined up that for the future that you guys can kind of just put yourselves and think about that. Before, like, I want to kind of go back to that a little bit, but before I do that, you guys, I think something that I want to just like jump on real quick is like, I know you guys are super big into, obviously, I know Joe has been always, since I met him, it's like, I want to make sure that when we work together, it's always been about like, let's kind of get you moving and let's get you to promote this sort of health aspect of things, right? Because we always talk about performers and having all this demand on their bodies and all these things with them, and we have to, like, at least I like to talk about that nowadays a lot more in terms of like how that affects their mental aspect, the physical aspect, all that stuff, and prepare them for that. But also for you guys, it's been like on the back end of things, there's also, in a way, there's like a mirror image of what happens to you guys because of all the things that you have to be like doing in order to put those shows on, in order to get those things rolling. I've heard some.
Oh, yeah, I work out tonight.
Yeah, your schedule, Ryan. I don't even want to touch that schedule because it's like when it was all up and going, your schedule was just like something that I could not even think was even like I don't even know how one person does the things that you've done. And that's the same with Joe. It's just like sometimes I would just hear you guys schedule and it just would baffle me at how much that was. So in that mental aspect of things, how has I guess health outside of what you do played, I guess, a role in you guys' life since before this and then now, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, Brian and I have both very different health, physical, well, our bodies are completely different from each other, like entirely different. So the way that we've had to both train our bodies and work out how we eat is, we both eat healthy, but, my way of eating has to be different than Ryan's just because his body is different. But I mean, I'll let you talk about your journey, Ryan, which, is with your schedule and, Jonathan's right. The way that the theater industry, specifically your job within the industry, works is that regardless of how many people complain about their hours, no one works longer hours than the production manager, period. Full stop. The story just is what it is. You're there before everyone and you're the last person to leave, and you continue working as soon as you get home, and you're ultimately the one responsible for anything that happens in the building and anything that's going into the building, coming out of the building, and everything else. So
yeah, that's crazy. I don't know how you do that, but yeah.
I mean, it's killer on schedule, but I honestly mean that, like, I find time to work out because it's a priority for me. And it's a priority for me for my own mental health. It's a priority for me to like get out frustration. It's a priority for me to get out anger, because, you know, like I'm a pretty much a glass half full kind of a person. I'm not a Debbie Downer. I certainly have my moments about things, and like you can get down about stuff, but I always work to try to make sure that when I come into a space, I have a level of calm about me. Like, I don't want to be part of a problem. I want to be a solutions driven person, right? I want to be somebody people come to solve problems. And so I find that approachability is a big thing about that and that kind of thing. But if you're angry all the time or you're harboring that and it's just in you all the time, that doesn't get anywhere. And so I deliberately find time on dinner breaks and things like that to make sure that I can get to a gym, even if it's only for 45 minutes or even sometimes even less than that. Sometimes it's like, I got 40 minutes. What can I get done in 40 minutes? But that is still very important to me in terms of how I can carve out that time for my own mental health. And the upside is, like, as you grow in this industry a little bit, you do get the benefit of carving out your own time a little bit more. You're not at other people's schedules quite in the same way, which is always a nice thing to have as you sort of get older. But you know, for me, it's always, that's what I have to do to find my own mental space. And, you know, I will admit that there are things like my weight loss journey and my weight and my workout journey have been a total, you know, up and down my entire life. You know, I played sports as a kid. I played hockey for a long time. I played football in high school and that kind of thing. But by the time I was done in high school, my weight started to balloons. I went to college, and, you know, and in college, you know, was dancing all the time and that kind of stuff for performance. And so my weight dropped, but it's always been this sort of seesaw. And so I'm always trying to find ways that I can maintain or ways that I can get myself back on track. And sometimes you need a hard reset, right? Like, you choose to start taking on a program. Like, I am coming out of COVID in particular. Over the first few months, I was heavier than I wanted it to be coming out of COVID, not for lack of working out, but more, I think, because it was like we were eating all this kind of crap that we had around. It was like comfort eating to a point and needing to reset that in some way. So it was like, all right, I'm going to start recounting my calories. I'm going to get back to like how I can make myself healthy. We were able to get our hands on some heavier weights so that we could sort of up our workout regimen as opposed to just doing band work all the time and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Those have been helpful things in starting to get me back on track. But it's a journey. It's like, we're all in this for the long haul. There's no like one short answer. And I think that's the key, right? Like, how long can you do it consistently?
And that's been pretty big for you guys kind of right now to keep you grounded a little. Have you found ways of kind of just translating that? You say gym a lot, and obviously gym right now is like non-existent. Well, not non-existent, but it wasn't for a while. But now it's getting back, but still like pretty like here and there, touch and go. So you guys have found ways of kind of still keeping that and allowing that to kind of sink you back down into some moment of zen.
Yeah. I mean, as you know, having trained, you know, me for several years at this point, that, you know, my whole fitness philosophy is, yes, I want to be healthy first and foremost, but as you can attest, as I would come in at the end of the workday, you would often see me sometimes in various states of mental, I don't want to say anguish, but, you know, different, you know, mood swings is probably the best way to describe it. And I always needed that physical activity to clear my brain so that I could actually go home at night and either decompress. And I think we lost Ryan.
We lost Ryan. Where'd he go?
Do you want to sign out and log back in, and then we can finish the conversation without the time?
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. I'll do it right now.
Okay.